The World Cup is 94 years old. The first one was held in Uruguay in 1930. Uruguay won. 13 teams competed. And the tournament was already controversial. Several European nations refused to travel because the boat trip to South America took 2 weeks each way. But here's what's fascinating about the early history. The World Cup was not immediately dominant. For the first few decades, it competed with the Olympics for prestige. Football, soccer, had been an Olympic sport since 1900. The World Cup had to prove it was worth caring about separately. It did that by doing something the Olympics never could. It allowed professional players. The Olympics, for most of its history, required amateur athletes. The World Cup had no such restriction. So the best players in the world, the ones who played professionally, who had trained their entire lives, could only compete at the World Cup. The Olympics got the second best players. The World Cup got the legends. Pelé, Diego Maradona, Ronaldo, Zinedine Zidane. These names are not just soccer names, they're cultural figures on the level of Muhammad Ali or Michael Jordan, but globally. Maradona in Argentina isn't a sports hero, he's a religious figure, literally. There is a Church of Maradona in Argentina with over 100,000 registered members. They have their own gospel, their own commandments, their own holidays based on key moments in his career. That's not hyperbole, that's a real thing that exists. And Maradona's most famous moment, the Hand of God goal against England in 1986, is another layer of history most Americans don't know. Argentina and England had fought a real war just 4 years earlier. The Falklands War, 1982. People died. And in 1986, those two countries met in a World Cup quarter-final. Maradona scored with his hand, illegally, and the referee didn't see it. He scored a second goal minutes later that is widely considered the greatest individual goal ever scored. Argentina won. Maradona later said the first goal was scored a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. In Argentina, it wasn't cheating. It was revenge. It was justice. It was history. That's what the World Cup carries that no other sporting event does. It's not just sport, it's politics, history, identity, and emotion compressed into 90-minute windows every 4 years. That's important, but here's the most mind-blowing fact I saved for this exact moment. The 4-year cycle is not arbitrary, and understanding it unlocks something about why this event hits so differently than anything else. Think about what happens every 4 years in your life. A lot. Kids are born and start school. People graduate college. Relationships begin and end. Careers shift. 4 years is long enough that the person who watched the last World Cup is genuinely different from the person watching this one. You've grown. You've changed. The players have changed too. Some retired, some emerged as new stars. Some are playing what might be their last tournament. There's a grief built into the World Cup that no annual championship has. When the tournament ends, you know the next one is 4 years away. That's not next season. That's a different chapter of your life. Players who are 30 now will be 34 then. Some of them won't make it. Some will be injured. Some will retire. Every World Cup final carries the weight of finality in a way that a Super Bowl or NBA Finals just doesn't. Lionel Messi, widely considered the greatest soccer player who ever lived, won his first World Cup in 2022 at age 35. He had spent his entire career, 17 years at the top level, without winning the one trophy that defines greatness in global soccer. And when he finally lifted that trophy in Qatar, something happened that transcended sports. Grown men cried in countries that weren't even Argentina. Not because they were Messi fans necessarily, because they understood what it meant to finally achieve the thing you've worked your whole life for. The human story was so universal, it broke through every cultural barrier. That moment was watched by more people simultaneously than almost any other event in human history. And Americans are just now starting to feel this. Because here's what's changing. The 2026 World Cup is being hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It's the first time the US has hosted since 1994. And 1994 was actually a turning point. It's when soccer started to take root in America in a serious way. Major League Soccer was founded directly because of the 1994 World Cup hosting requirement. FIFA required the US to have a professional league as a condition of hosting. So, MLS exists because of the World Cup. In 2026, 48 teams will compete instead of 32. More games, more countries, more stories, and a significant chunk of those games will be played in American stadiums. MetLife in New Jersey, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, SoFi in Los Angeles, and others. The largest soccer audiences in American history are about to happen on American soil. And here's the thing that should make every American pay attention. The US men's national team is actually good now. Not good for America good, actually competitive on the global stage. Players like Christian Pulisic play for AC Milan, one of the most storied clubs in the world. Gio Reyna, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie. These guys play in the top leagues in Europe. This isn't 1990 anymore, when the US team was essentially amateurs showing up to not embarrass themselves. The 2022 World Cup showed a glimpse of what's possible. The US made it out of a group that included England, Iran, and Wales. They were knocked out by the Netherlands in the round of 16, a competitive match, not a blowout. The trajectory is real. So here's the question you should be sitting with right now. Why did it take Americans so long to find this? And the honest answer is, it's structural. American sports media is built around American leagues, the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL. These are billion-dollar ecosystems with their own media infrastructure. Soccer, especially international soccer, has historically been covered as a foreign curiosity rather than a mainstream event. When the World Cup happened every 4 years, American networks didn't always know what to do with it. Coverage was inconsistent. Scheduling was awkward. The games were sometimes on at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, but streaming changed everything. In 2022, Peacock, Fox Sports, and Telemundo gave Americans more access to World Cup content than ever before. Social media made the moments impossible to ignore. When the US beat Iran in a must-win group stage game, it trended nationally, even among people who didn't watch. The clips spread, the emotions spread, and millions of Americans who had never cared about soccer suddenly understood, for just a moment, what the rest of the world has always felt. That feeling? That's the hook. Once you feel it, you don't forget it. And look, if this is landing for you, if you're starting to see this thing differently than you did 5 minutes ago, I want to know. Drop a comment below. Tell me, did you know any of this before watching? Were you already a soccer fan, or did this video shift something? Those comments genuinely help this video reach more people who need to see it, and I read them. Actually read them. Also, if you want to go deeper on the specific stories I mentioned, Maradona's Hand of God, the 1994 World Cup in America, or how Messi's 2022 win was received around the world. Those videos are coming. Subscribe so you don't miss them, because this rabbit hole goes much deeper than one video can cover. Now let me bring this all together, because I want to leave you with something that actually sticks. Here's what you now know that most Americans don't. The World Cup is the single largest event in human history by viewership. It dwarfs the Olympics, the Super Bowl, and every other sporting event by a factor that's almost embarrassing to compare. It draws 5 billion total viewers per tournament. Its final is watched simultaneously by over 1 billion people. It's not just big because of soccer. It's big because it's the only event where every country on Earth has something at stake. 211 nations compete in qualifying. More than the United Nations has members. Every match carries the weight of national identity, political history, and collective emotion in a way that no annual league championship can replicate. The economics are counterintuitive. Hosting often costs more than it returns, but the ripple effects on consumer sentiment, spending behavior, and even public safety in competing nations are real and documented. The World Cup moves markets, empties streets, and changes the mood of entire countries. The 4-year cycle is not a flaw, it's the feature. It creates stakes that annual events can't manufacture. Players age, stories complete themselves. The gap between tournaments means every edition carries the weight of time in a way that makes each moment feel irreplaceable. And America is about to host it in 2026, with 48 teams, more games than ever, and a US team that's genuinely ready to compete. The moment when Americans fully join the rest of the world in caring about this thing is not some distant future. It's 2 years away. Here's the part that genuinely surprised me when I finished this research. I started this thinking I was going to explain why the World Cup is popular. I ended up realizing it's not popular. Popular is the wrong word. It's foundational. It's woven into the identity of most of the planet, in a way that Americans have been almost uniquely insulated from. Not because Americans are different, but because the structure of American sports media kept it at arm's length. That insulation is ending, and honestly, it's exciting. Because the rest of the world has been experiencing something extraordinary every 4 years for almost a century. And Americans are about to get their version of that feeling on home soil. When that Argentine fan cried in 2022, when Messi finally lifted the trophy, when that Senegalese player fell to his knees after beating France in 2002, when those South Korean fans flooded the streets of Seoul in red, they weren't just watching sports. They were feeling something that reminded them they were part of something bigger than themselves. That's what the world stops for. And in 2026, for the first time in a generation, America gets to stop too.